When it comes to Disney movies, we have our favorites where most do tend to be princesses or prince stories. We saw this at the very beginning with Snow White and moved on to Cinderella and so forth to great success. These stories have become the most cherished and beloved fairy tales in the modern age that many kids and adults hold dear to some degree. But there is only one that stands out to be the best that has come out in the previous decade. One that I believe to be the pinnacle of Disney's fairy tale stories and had the best romance out of any other Disney movie that has been ever made. And that, of course, my friends, is the one and only Tangled, the perfect Disney princess movie. Now, this isn't going to say it's in my favorite Disney movie list because I have so many that I think are far better than this film, but I can really say without a doubt, with what it did for Disney, it still remains to be one of the greatest hits to come out of the 21st century. This is something I've expressed many times before, and I still stand by for it being the definitive film that actually began Disney's revival era of animation. Everything we mostly see today involving Disney animation is based upon the designs of this very film, which is truly beautiful in its own right. It's one I have expressed still aged quite so well for the most part compared to earlier stories like Chicken Little and Meet the Robinsons, which of course is still okay considering it had a great story with a great retro-futuristic design to it, but Tangled really paved the way for Disney as we know it today, where this movie should have gotten the money Frozen made because it is completely better in every single way. And of course, the most interesting thing about Tangled was the title change from Rapunzel, knowing what kind of story it went for. It was one that had controversy to it, but was actually made sense since the story is about two main characters in Eugene and Rapunzel. It's not just about one character, and that's what makes Tangled so unique as a Disney story compared to the other princesses fairy tales that have been usually told, focusing on one more than the other. Everything that the movie did was truly a groundbreaking starting point for these stories to take place in Disney, and it really worked well. Because the beginning introduces us to the main source for the story from a magical drop of sunlight giving birth to a golden flower that has healing powers, one that introduces us to our main villain in an old hag known as Mother Gothel, using it for centuries to stay youthful while introducing us to the kingdom of Corona and the king and queen who were due to have a child but got sick during the process, where they searched for a cure and found it in this very flower where Mother Gothel forgot to hide it in a rush. This is a scene that showed us how willing the townsfolk were willing to help the queen, showcasing how great their rulers really were, more so than Arendelle's royal lineage ever could. Where this is where they managed to heal her, where as a result of the flower power she inherited, those powers made her hair turn to gold, explaining why she doesn't have the same brunette hair from her own parents quite yet, and establishing that the lanterns was a symbol of rebirth for them, for her first birthday that would live on through the themes of this very movie. And this is where we showcase Mother Gothel's selfishness, stealing the baby that had the powers now for herself, all that so that she could retain her youthfulness, locking her away to cement her own ideals so that she could keep them forever. Where the lanterns come back into view, connecting with Rapunzel, not knowing what they are specifically, but feeling a connection to them, which was done to celebrate her birthday and the chance to find their long lost daughter. And that's the perfect way to introduce the story to us in the most fairy tale type fashion when we go back to an 18-year-old Rapunzel who now has a pet chameleon named Pascal, where this scene establishes her dreams throughout the song When Will My Life Begin. It's a very charming song that showcases all the things that she does inside while yearning for the chance to finally actually touch grass for the first time. We are actually looking at a character that has spent an eternity in a singular place, raised by a horrible woman, reminiscent of older Disney villains like the evil queen that values their own beauty over others, and of course carry the realistic manipulation traits of their greatest villains like Frollo. The song really showcases her everlasting positive attitude, doing things in her mundane sheltered life, trying to have fun and being hopeful, looking back on her own paintings of the lanterns that she has seen for her entire life on every single birthday she has had, looking for something meaningful in her sheltered place, and that really is a strong introduction for our main hero while introducing us to our second, who has also served as our narrator in Flynn Rider. And similarly, in his case, he's looking for something meaningful in his life while being a dastardly thief working with the Stabbington brothers for what is Rapunzel's intended crown. And you just have to love how they present him as the handsome young man who smooches his way through situations and slips through guarded areas without a scratch, where he's also just worried about his own appearance. It's a short but effective way to showcase what they want to focus on in the story when we see him back from the outside and Rapunzel back on in the inside. Of course, showcasing more of Mother Gothel's own character throughout songs like Mother Knows Best. In this sequence, we really see how she values Rapunzel and her years of gaslighting as a main villain all for herself. She constantly jokes around, obviously pretending to care about Rapunzel while also being passive aggressive towards her by subtly insulting her and instilling that the world is a dangerous place filled with the most nasty things ever possible, just protecting her for her best interest, which of course in this case means Mother Gothel's best interest. And it was really a great choice for having this song take place in the dark, where she moves around Rapunzel so quickly to communicate to us the many ways the outside world is bad for Rapunzel, something that will affect her mental attitude when she decides to go out seeing things she's not used to because of how she trained her to think this way. It's something very similar to Frollo, but being more relatable to a degree in an actual villain because of how some families actually gaslight their offspring for many years. How she managed to do this because she cares and praises Rapunzel for providing for her, while seamlessly showcasing the opposite for her own character, something that must be broken by the end of the film when we transition back to Flynn. This is where we showcase how he's mostly in it for himself, betraying the Stabbingtons and of course getting chased by the royal guards and meeting Maximus. This is where the film perfectly uses its animal characters in a fun comedic way that has a lot of personality to it without overall having a voice. We see Maximus, a determined horse, against Flynn and the other criminals hellbent to stop him, becoming this arch nemesis to Flynn for the entire first half of the film until he manages to hide away, allowing him to discover Rapunzel's tower, a place he could be safe for now and hide while he contains his own treasures. Of course, at the same time he gets hit because it is Rapunzel's tower and she hides him away while remaining curious about him and discovering his satchel that had the crown that we know is supposed to be hers, which we see is communicated to us well, and how it fits her on her head and by Pascal's face, representing a very important moment for both our characters when he stole something that actually belonged to the princess herself that we all know is in fact Rapunzel. And this still encourages her to talk about this to her mother to prove how brave she is, but she still keeps shutting her out because the moment she is out there, she'll lose any grip of power for eternity and perish as a result, an act of self-preservation where she screams that she cannot leave the tower at all. But then she settles down and gets back out there, where now she decides to question this mysterious intruder, thus settling in our first interaction for our two heroes, where now he has no choice but to make a deal to let her out of the tower before he can get his satchel back, and it's done in this very comedic way with how his charms do not work on Rapunzel. How you get two people that meet their own personal match in the most unlikely way, where Flynn is so unenthusiastic about things when he doesn't have what he wants, while Rapunzel is just longing for everything she hasn't witnessed in her life. She is just so bubbly and embracing everything she sees, and you see that when she finally goes out, when Rapunzel touches grass for the first time in her life. You see that excitement while Flynn is just bored and confused. It's a very important moment for her where she highlights how she yearned for all of this, but is also still conflicted because of what her own mother has done to manipulate her about the world. She suffers from the anxiety and reaction that Gothel has caused in her life, that she's put in this confused state considering if she should be out here at all to see the lanterns while still respecting the woman who has raised her. It's a very interesting way to showcase the villain's effect on the main character even when she's not on screen. And Flynn at first tries to use that to his advantage, where he can get the satchel back as soon as possible. He only cares about what he wants in the material without caring for what she is feeling in the moment and what she has went through going to places like the Snuggly Duckling, where at the same time Gothel now sees that she is gone and now acts out of desperation for the knowledge of where she is going with the poster of Flynn Rider. And at the Snuggly Duckling, we try to cement this idea of ruffians and thugs dominating the entire world being enough to send her back inside. But it's kind of ruined when we also see her care for Flynn because he's wanted and doing things through discussing the dreams of others. How we see our own powers connect with the others and soften them up to see what they want. And I like this because it adds so much to the side characters of the story than ever before in other Disney films. They just add so much to the movie without them being overall important, and I really like that because everyone sings except Flynn. That line alone made him my favorite Disney prince at the time it was released because he was not afraid to question or do the random singing at first until he does it later. But it's done here so we can try to find out what his dreams really are like the others sharing their passions like Rapunzel as the main message of the movie, finding out who you are and allowing them to escape when the guards come through. And then when we see that escape, we see it done in this fun sequence where they use creative ways of Rapunzel's hair to cut off the others and showcase the power that pants have over swords, the best weapon that humanity has ever invented. This leads to the dam of water to break, where as a result they get trapped feeling like they will die, showcasing their most vulnerable moments, revealing things to others that they wouldn't at all considering the world around them, like how Flynn's name is actually Eugene Fitzherbert, and where she reveals her magical powers, which actually saves them in the end. It's at the same time this allows Gothel to make a deal with the Stabbingtons to find them to get their revenge while they get the crown, showcasing more of her real powers of manipulation and deal making like what villains like Frollo has done, how the most effective Disney villains are made when they're more acting out of their own manipulations, being more human to gain control of a situation that is not in the physical or magical way at all. And then we lead back to Rapunzel finally healing Eugene, shocking him once more and explaining her backstory backstory to why she didn't leave because of how others wanted to possess her powers, forcing her to stay up there, and how her cut hair actually turns brown. An important piece we will learn later where he questions if she would go back since she sort of revealed that Gothel actually kept her in there, causing her to doubt if she wants to return or not at all. While Eugene at the same time opens up about his past, sort of connecting to this swashbuckling tale of Flanagan Rider to find something of worth in his life. You see, this is the moment where they start growing to each other in the film, slowly but surely realizing what is more important to their own goals or dreams or relationship. But then you also have to cut back to Gothel finding Rapunzel again, where she tries to explain she's seen such wonderful things out there and might have fallen in love, but she constantly tries to set doubt in her mind considering that he is a thief, turning Mother Knows Best into a Rapunzel Knows Best, trying to make her question what she's doing that will not actually end well for her, because he wants the crown and that's what he's here for rather than her, making her cautious of this reality where if it were to break, she would actually return back to solitude and her own power because the world is that so cruel and unforgivable. The power of manipulation in this film is just so strong and so compelling that it far surpasses a lot of other villains that just use magic just for the sake of it. And then you get back to Maximus finding them out, where Rapunzel actually manages to calm him down and befriend him, causing them to make a truce so that she could actually see the lights, where they both agree to take them to the kingdom since it is the day of her birthday. It's where you sort of love Maximus and Eugene's relationship more so than him and Rapunzel's because of how comedic they are throughout with their physical acts. And then they also go throughout the kingdom to try to hide from the guards, and in some cases where she finally gets braided and enamored by the townsfolk, mysteriously connecting to this image of the king and queen and their lost daughter who actually somewhat looks like her. This is where we finally get to see her true charm as a character, where she drags several people to join her dancing to this beautiful music, and the people actually kind of get down with that because of how bubbly she is. It reflects a moment of her hidden power of connecting people for one that was sheltered her entire life. She just has this natural charm and charisma that attracts people to get down, like Eugene as well. It's kind of one of the best fast-paced sequences in the film, where the music gets more intense and the colors grow more vivid, making their relationship grow even more when they finally get on the boat to see the lanterns that she's dreamed about. And it's where she questions what happens after she accomplishes seeing this, where he responds that you get to go out and find your new dream, which is really more important to the story, where there's always more than one dream that you can have and that you can achieve. You don't have to stop at one to fulfill your life, where you just keep going, which is exactly what her parents have been doing for the past 18 years, where we also see them again and see their sad emotions, especially on the king, crying about what they lost that might never be found again, and done in this way without any dialogue, which is really effective and powerful to showcase their characters overall, which is still 10 times more powerful than what Agnar and Iduna actually brought overall in either of the two Frozen films. Dumbasses. And this is where I See the Light begins and introduces us to the most beautiful scene in the entire movie, and one of the most beautiful scenes in Disney overall, where you have to give a job well done to Alan Menken yet again, who returned to compose the music like he did in the Renaissance to start the revival with that flavor once again. And this is the moment where her dream finally comes true, bringing the emotional peak of the film, where Eugene realizes his dream, done by the lyrics, how it's not just the lanterns physically being released and blossoming into the sky, it's now both Eugene's and Rapunzel's love blooming bright at the same time, agreeable because it was well awarded in that very moment. How you built up to this during the course of the film, and now you are seeing what you want in the relationship forming. The audience is now seeing the light, where the fog was lifted to realize what dreams the main characters have now, but then again it also gets abruptly stopped when they almost kiss when the Stabbingtons appear once again, setting us this attitude to try to settle this deal by giving them the crown, where he can try to lead a new life with Rapunzel instead, sort of still testing her mind because of what Gothel instilled in hers at the same time, where of course due to this deal they have made, they want to capture Rapunzel instead, considering she has the glowing hair, where they plan to use her and knock him out to send him back to Corona to prison and execution. It's where they try to get her, where she sort of sees him leaving with the satchel, making her mother seem right in the situation, while she betrays the other two so that she can connect her while proving that Mother always knows best, backstabbing the other two to get what she wants and desires, manipulating to think that Rapunzel has been betrayed in the moment and that her mother was always right, while Eugene gets prison time, where Maximus realizes that they were out together and tries to set off to rescue him. It's also where she realizes the truth back home while she carried the kingdom's flag resembling the sun that she drew throughout her room, finally realizing who she is, being the lost princess, and realizing the years years of lies Mother Gothel has instilled in her. It's a very powerful moment where she now actually figures out what she has done trying to send Eugene to be executed before she finally stands up to fight for what is right because of the freedom she has experienced and the imprisonment she has faced for all of her life at this point. One that Mother Gothel tries to now force by chaining her up, while the boys at the Snuggly Duckling plot to rescue Eugene, spearheaded by Maximus to finally save Rapunzel, which he tries but then gets stabbed by Gothel to try to end this from anyone else ever knowing of the truth, trapping him here so that she can live out her desires for the rest of eternity. Her evil just knows no bounds because of how selfish and vain she truly is about herself, and we still see this grow when she tries to blame Rapunzel for this because she went out and now has to suffer with his very death. But she knows that won't work because she still fights this knowing the truth, but only agrees to submit if he gets the chance to live on, agreeing to the situation where he is not allowed to follow them. This remains to be the most important emotional moment of the film, where Eugene doesn't want her to go because she'll know she'll no longer live or be free, used for eternity as nothing but a tool, but she just does it because she just loves him, where we see this communicated to us by how he brushes her hair out of her face as he has done before to actually see her, and finally using the piece of glass to cut it off, making her hair turn brown, thus losing her powers. It's a moment that works in a lot more ways than you realize because of how it reflects on the worth of Rapunzel and what she's offered to the world more so than her hair. Gothel in this case just used her caring for her powers because of her hair and nothing else about her, while people like Eugene just actually saw her for who she is as a human being worth more than that, and thus causing Gothel to rapidly age and lose badly when she finally traps and falls before fading into dust as a consequence of her actions. It's a really effective way to use the old fall to your death trope because it represents her collapse when your bones eventually turn into dust in a very slow manner, while Eugene finally accepts his fate, exclaiming that she was his new dream that he found throughout the film. It's a very powerful emotional moment because of how the colors are now muted to this gray around them, communicating his death in this very moment. Everything before this with her hair being golden still had color, but everything after, including the sky, actually turned gray and dark, reflecting of the loss in both the hair and Eugene, making it a sad moment and making her cry, knowing that he was her dream too. Singing the song for the last time before this tear carried the remaining magic of her powers to keep him alive, and realizing that she could still do it through the power of love, where it's once again brilliantly communicated back to us when the colors return that he does return to life, finally getting back to a happily ever after moment. And this finally ends things for the better, where the king and queen are alerted that their daughter is finally back, finally in her natural state with her hair as they see again, 18 years later on a beautiful evening where we finally see them connect as both her and her mother see, because of course they actually very much look alike, where the king also celebrates the fact, cheerful at the return of their daughter, while Eugene was also embraced in this hug for actually returning them back, the circle now being complete for their dreams and adventures from the very beginning. This is where we finally get our epilogue scene, where everyone happily achieves their dreams together at the same time, with a real family for Rapunzel and their relationship blossoming and beloved by all in the kingdom, where Rapunzel and Eugene finally end things on a happy note, about to get married. The perfect ending to the perfect fairy tale. Everything Tangled did was the absolute perfect way to reintroduce Disney to success they have been used to with their older stories that they were ever so good at, with a fairy tale like Rapunzel's. And like I said, they made a story with the best relationship ever, really growing along and fleshing out each idea of the characters makes you to relate them and agree with their decisions overall, the wants of people that are either both good or bad. It's really a story that surpasses other fairy tale love stories in so many ways, especially Frozen for what it did, and it really deserved more love than you think about it and watch it, especially knowing Kristoff and Anna's relationship that really pales in comparison in either of the two movies compared to the singular Tangled film. But overall, it was really a great Disney experience, because after all, it was co-directed by Byron Howard, who also teamed up to create another great film in Encanto with director Jared Bush from Zootopia, a film that showcased a clear path of development that actually Tangled brought and started to bring such rich stories to Disney once again. I mean, all of what we see today was truly influenced by this movie, and we should be grateful for it for many years to come. And with that said, I'm all done, so goodbye.